resurrection. Job 19, 25, 26 says, 25 And as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will take his stand on the earth. 26 Even after my skin is destroyed, yet from my flesh I shall see God.
Amen.
Daniel 12, 2 says, 2 And many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting, Olam, life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting, Olam, contempt.
Amen.
These verses shaped Hebrew Pharisee doctrine, in which Paul had been educated. If Paul had deviated from this view, it is certain that he would have left us a record of it in 1 Corinthians 15. But there is no trace of deviation. In fact, he proves the fact of our own resurrection by the example of Jesus Christ himself. The only so-called Christians in the early church who argued against the physical death and resurrection of Jesus were the Gnostics. John was particularly repulsed by Gnostic teaching. There is no place in any of John's writings to indicate that he had deviated from the Hebrew idea of resurrection, and so, to adopt the Greek view of resurrection and to redefine it as some did long after the death of the apostles is not credible or sustainable in my view. The first resurrection is a corporate event, not a personal one. A corporate event is like the day of Pentecost in Acts 2, whereas a personal event is like the day that Cornelius and his friends experienced Pentecost for themselves. These are distinct events. So also, John does not treat the first resurrection as a personal experience, but as a corporate event.
Amen.
The first resurrection is reserved for the overcomers who will reign with him for 1,000 years.
1,000 years.
It is not about becoming a believer, but about the reward for being an overcomer. It is not about citizenship in the kingdom, but about rulership. John explains that 1,000 years after the first resurrection comes the great white throne judgment, in which all their remaining dead are raised, including both believers and unbelievers.
Believers
This
and
is proven
unbelievers.
by Jesus' words in John 5, 28, 29, where he speaks of this general resurrection. 28 Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming, in which all who are in the tombs shall hear his voice. 29 And shall come forth, those who did the good deeds to a resurrection of life, those who committed the evil deeds to a resurrection of judgment. Note that this is a single hour. That is, both just and unjust will be raised at the same time.
Right.
This is obviously not the first resurrection, where only believers are raised. This is a clear description of the second resurrection, where all who remain in the tombs will come forth for judgment. Note also that there will be believers raised at this hour, along with unbelievers. Jesus says that the just will be given life, while the unjust will be judged. Many teach today that all believers will be raised at the first resurrection, and all the unbelievers will be raised at the next resurrection. This simply cannot be true, if Jesus' words are to be believed. Paul offers a double witness to this teaching that the second resurrection will include both good and bad. He says in Acts 24, 14 and 15, 14 But this I admit to you, that according to the way which they call a sect I do serve the God of our fathers, believing everything that is in accordance with the law, and that is written in the prophets. 15 Having a hope in God, which these men cherish themselves, that there shall certainly be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked.
Both the righteous and the wicked.
Referring to the second, not the first resurrection, because only blessed and holy people are raised the first time. We must conclude, then, that not all Christians will be raised in the first resurrection.
Okay.
Some must remain in the grave until the second resurrection, otherwise the statements by Jesus and Paul would be incorrect. When we look at the rather detailed description of the second resurrection in Revelation 20, we find hints that there will be believers judged at that time. The very fact that the book of life is opened, 20:12, hints at this. Why would the book of life be opened, if no one standing there were written in it? Furthermore, verse 15 strongly implies this when John says, 15 And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. Certainly this means that many will be found written in that book, and those who are will be given life at that time, as Jesus said.
Okay.
Who are these believers? Why would they need to be judged? I believe the key is found in Jesus' teaching in Luke 12, 35-50. Jesus speaks of the faithful and sensible steward whom his master will put in charge of his servants. 12:42. Such people, Jesus says, will be given a place of rulership and responsibility. This says essentially the same thing as Revelation 24, where those of the first resurrection came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. There is, however, another kind of servant, or slave. Keep in mind that he is still called God's slave, a believer, but he is not blessed and holy by any means. Jesus continues in verse 45 of Luke 12:45, But if that slave says in his heart, My master will be a long time in coming, and